Welcome to another deep dive. And today, we're going to be talking about something that most people, maybe
Yeah.
don't think too much about,
Right. Yeah.
but it's actually like one of the foundations of reliable software. And I'm talking about unit testing, all those apps and websites you
Uh,
use every single day.
mhm.
Well, behind the scenes, there's this whole team of unsung heroes who
Mhm.
are making sure that those apps and websites don't just crash and burn. They're
Absolutely.
doing all this testing.
Yeah, yeah. It's really more crucial, I think, than a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine this. So back in 2015, there was, a major airline
Oh, no.
that had a complete system outage,
Oh, wow.
and it grounded flights like worldwide.
Really?
And it turned out that it was a single untested line of code that was the culprit.
Oh, my God.
And it ended up costing them millions of dollars in lost revenue.
Wow.
And I mean, thousands of passengers were stranded.
That's a crazy story. It's just one line of code, but it can have, massive consequences.
Yeah, it really shows you how even the tiniest little coding error can have this huge ripple effect.
So let's break this down. What exactly is unit testing?
Okay, so you can think of it kind of like quality control, but for code.
Okay.
It's about isolating individual units of code, like functions or modules, and testing those in isolation before they're integrated into the larger software system.
So it's like making sure each ingredient in a cake tastes good before you mix it all together.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Except, I mean, instead of ruining your dessert, a software bug could lead to anything from, just a minor inconvenience to even a catastrophic system failure.
Like that airline.
Right. Exactly.
Wow. Okay, I'm starting to get the picture here.
Yeah.
So how do we actually go about doing this unit testing?
So there's two main approaches. There's manual and automated. Manual testing is kind of like, if you can imagine, meticulously hand-checking each piece of a puzzle, before you assemble it.
Okay.
You've got this keen eye, and you're looking for subtle flaws, inconsistencies, anything that's going to throw off the final picture.
Right. So it's very meticulous and very hands-on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I imagine it could be quite time-consuming, especially for large projects.
Absolutely. And that's where automated testing kind of comes into play.
Okay.
This is like if you can imagine having a robot that can scan thousands of puzzle pieces in seconds, just identifying any imperfections really fast.
That makes a lot of sense. So automated testing is all about using software tools to do the heavy lifting.
Right, exactly. So these tests are scripts or programs that run through predefined test cases,
Okay.
and they're checking for specific outcomes.
Gotcha.
So that makes them much faster and more efficient than doing it manually,
Mm-hmm.
especially for these repetitive tasks and large code bases.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But which one's better?
See, that's the catch. It's not really about one being inherently better than the other.
Okay.
It's more about choosing the right tool for the job.
Right.
So manual testing is really great for these nuanced scenarios where human intuition and creativity are key, like if you're testing the user interface of a new app.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. But then automated testing, on the other hand, this is the champion for these large projects, the repetitive tasks. And, what they call regression testing. That's making sure that new code changes don't break existing functionality.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's like choosing between a master craftsman who's meticulously carving details by hand versus a high-tech laser cutter for mass production.
Exactly.
It just depends what you're doing.
Right. And often the best approach is kind of a blend of the two.
Okay.
Using automated tests for like the bulk of the work and then reserving the manual testing for areas that need that human touch.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so we've covered like the who's doing the unit testing, manual versus automated, but what about the how? Our source material mentions different strategies like white box, black box, and gray box. What are those?
Okay. Yeah. So think of it this way. Imagine you're trying to test a car.
Okay.
Okay. With white box testing, you've got like mechanic level knowledge.
Oh, wow.
You can pop the hood, you can analyze the engine, understand how each part works, and then you can test the individual components in isolation.
So white box testing is all about understanding the code's inner workings.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay.
It allows for this thorough examination of the code's logic, but it requires that significant technical expertise,
Right.
and it can be quite time-consuming as well.
Okay.
Now, on the flip side, black box testing is
Yeah.
like being the driver who just cares about getting from point A to point B.
Okay.
You don't need to know how the engine works. You just need to know if the car starts, steers, stops as expected.
Right. So with black box, you're focusing on the inputs and outputs, the functionality,
Beautiful.
without really understanding the code behind it. Okay.
So it's a more user-centric approach.
Gotcha.
And it's really great for testing things like the user interface or the overall functionality.
Mm-hmm.
But it might miss some of the underlying issues that a white box approach would catch.
Right. Okay. And then what about gray box?
So gray box,
Is that like the middle ground?
yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Imagine you're like a savvy driver
Okay.
who knows a little bit about car mechanics, just enough to check the oil and tire pressure, but you're not rebuilding the engine,
Okay.
right? So you have some knowledge of the internal workings,
Hmm.
but you're primarily focused on the performance on the road,
Okay.
you know?
So gray box testing is like that sweet spot, you know?
Yeah.
You know enough to be dangerous,
Right.
but you're not like rebuilding the engine.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So studies have shown that like incorporating unit testing, especially the automated kind, can significantly reduce development costs
Really?
and time to market.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That sounds counterintuitive.
I know, right?
Like, wouldn't writing all these tests just slow you down?
It might seem that way at first, but think about it this way.
Okay.
When you catch those bugs early on, you're preventing these much larger, more expensive fixes down the line.
Right.
So imagine if you had a construction team building a skyscraper,
Okay.
but they never bother to check the foundation.
Oh, all right.
Right. It's much easier and cheaper to fix a crack in that foundation early on than it is to like demolish and rebuild several floors after the fact.
Right. A stitch in time saves 9, or in this case, a well-placed unit test saves millions.
Exactly.
Okay, so can you give me some like real-world examples of these testing strategies in action?
Okay, sure.
Like, how does this actually work?
All right, so let's take a mobile banking app, for example.
Okay.
With the white box testing, the developers are going to be meticulously testing like the algorithms they calculate interest rates, making sure that everything is accurate down to like the last decimal point. Right. Then black box testing is going to focus more on that user experience,
Okay.
making sure that the app is intuitive to use, the login is secure, transactions are processed smoothly, all of that.
And then gray box kind of bridges the gap between the two.
Exactly.
Okay.
So a gray box tester might analyze the app's response times under different network conditions,
Mm-hmm.
or they might test the security of that data transmission between the app and the bank's servers.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, thinking back to that airline example that you mentioned, do you think that whole fiasco could have been prevented with just better unit testing?
Most likely, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, that specific error, it came from a single line of code.
it's crazy.
It could easily been caught with a really simple unit test.
Wow.
It just shows how neglecting these tests, even for what seem like small parts of the code, can have just catastrophic consequences.
Yeah, it's like that saying, for want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost.
Yeah.
For want of a horse, the rider was lost. But like, for want of a unit test, the software was lost. And then the company was lost.
Yeah, very apt analogy.
And it highlights, and another important aspect, I think, of unit testing, the psychological benefit for the developers.
Oh, absolutely.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so, each component of their code has been like rigorously tested.
Yeah.
It gives them a sense of confidence, peace of mind.
Right.
They can focus on building those new features, innovating,
Right. Yeah.
knowing they have that safety net in place.
Right. It's like having a really good co-pilot who's constantly checking your instruments and making sure you're on course.
Exactly.
Okay.
It frees you up to focus on that bigger picture.
I like it.
Yeah, and that peace of mind translates into, higher quality software,
Yeah.
faster development cycle, happier developers.
Yeah.
It's a win-win situation for everybody.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, unit testing is crucial, but it's clearly not one size fits all, right?
Right.
So how do developers decide like which strategy to use and when?
So it really comes down to weighing the pros and cons, thinking about the project's specific needs,
Okay.
the resources that are available, and the level of risk involved.
Yeah.
So, for example, with mission-critical software, like something used in healthcare or aerospace, that's going to demand the most rigorous testing.
For sure.
You're probably going to use a combination of all three strategies.
That makes sense. Yeah, you don't want to skimp on the testing when lives are on the line.
Exactly.
But what about something less, I don't know, critical, like a mobile game?
Even then, unit testing is still valuable.
Okay.
The consequences of a bug in that case might be less severe,
Right.
but it can still really impact that user experience, which can lead to negative reviews, loss of revenue, all of that.
So whether it's, a life-saving medical device or a fun mobile game, unit testing is there.
It is.
It's playing this role in ensuring software quality, reliability, and just user satisfaction.
You got it.
Okay.
And that's why understanding these concepts is so important, even if you're not a programmer.
Right.
It empowers you to ask those right questions about the software that you use every day and advocate for these higher standards across the board.
I like it.
Yeah.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to a whole new dimension of software development.
Good, I'm glad.
But I'm curious, where do you see unit testing heading in the future?
Ooh, that's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
One trend I'm really excited about is the rise of these AI-powered testing tools.
Oh, wow.
So imagine software that can not only automatically generate those test cases,
Yeah.
but can actually analyze code for potential vulnerabilities.
Oh, really?
And even predict which parts of the system are most likely to have those bugs.
That sounds like it could totally revolutionize the way we think about software testing.
It really does have that potential.
Yeah.
I mean, these AI-powered tools could help us achieve even higher levels of software quality and security.
Yeah.
And it'll free up those human testers to focus on the more complex and creative aspects of testing.
So it's like having a super intelligent assistant
Yes.
who can just sift through mountains of data and spot patterns that maybe we would miss
Exactly.
and ultimately just make our software smarter, more reliable.
Exactly.
I love it.
And that's just the beginning. As AI and machine learning keep advancing,
Yeah.
we can expect even more innovative and sophisticated testing tools to come out.
Wow.
That'll just push the boundaries even further.
This is really mind-blowing stuff, but before we get too carried away with, thinking about the future,
Right.
let's bring it back to the present for a second.
Okay.
For someone who's not a programmer, how can they actually use this knowledge in their everyday life?
Well, for starters, it can make you a more discerning consumer of technology.
Okay.
So when you understand the importance of this unit testing,
Yeah.
you start to ask more insightful questions about the software that you use.
Mhm.
So, for example, when you're choosing a new financial app, you might ask, what kind of unit testing processes do you have in place to ensure the security of my data?
Right.
Or how do you ensure that new features aren't going to break existing functionality?
Right. So instead of just blindly trusting that an app is going to work flawlessly,
Right.
we can actually start inquiring about, the testing practices behind it.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't know, researching the safety features of a car before you buy it.
Precisely.
Right. You want to know what's going on under the hood.
You got it.
Okay.
It's about becoming like an informed and empowered user of technology.
I like it.
Yeah.
Demanding those higher standards of quality and reliability.
Exactly.
This has been a really insightful deep dive.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
We demystified the world of unit testing,
Yeah.
explored its importance, and I think even glimpsed a little bit into its future.
Yeah, and even if someone's listening and they've never written a line of code in their life.
Yeah. Understanding these concepts, I think, can make you a more informed and empowered user of technology.
Absolutely.
You can start asking the right questions.
Yeah.
About the software you use.
Exactly. It's like, knowing enough about car maintenance to be able to ask the mechanic the right questions.
Right.
You don't have to be able to rebuild the engine yourself.
Right.
But understanding those basics can help you make sure that your car is well maintained.
Right.
And safe to drive.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what's like the one key takeaway
Mm.
you want our listeners to walk away with today?
I would say that unit testing is kind of like the unsung hero of the software world.
Yeah.
It's often invisible to users,
Right.
but it plays this really crucial role in ensuring that the software we rely on every day is reliable, secure,
Yeah.
and ultimately enjoyable to use.
It's the foundation
Yeah.
upon which our digital lives are built.
Yeah, I like that.
And understanding it can empower us to be, better users of technology,
Absolutely, yeah.
more discerning.
Yeah. So the next time that you're using an app that works flawlessly or a website that loads really quickly and efficiently,
Yeah.
just take a moment to appreciate all that unseen work of unit testing that helped make that experience possible.
Yeah, for sure. And remember, whether you're, a hardcore programmer or you've never even seen a line of code,
Right.
you have a voice in shaping the future of technology by asking questions, advocating for higher standards, and, supporting companies that prioritize software quality.
Absolutely.
We can all contribute to a world where, Technology works seamlessly and it empowers us to live better lives.
Well said. It's a collective effort.
Yeah.
And even just that basic understanding of concepts like unit testing can make a real difference.
This has been a really great deep dive
It has.
into the world of unit testing. Thank you for taking this journey with me.
It's been my pleasure. And to all the listeners out there, keep exploring, keep learning,
Yes.
and never underestimate the power of a well-placed unit test.
Until next time, happy diving.
Happy diving.